the raid now.
Hey, we are back at the Nordic Game Studio. It's Funky Friday. I don't have any hearing left. That's why I'm wearing these gloves. Hopefully, that will be fixed now. So welcome back. Now we are ready for something special. I used to be a games journalist, and as you can see, I am very, very, very old. So this is one of my oldest friends from the games industry, ready to talk to Petri about the remastering of a Remedy classic. It's Alan Wake's comeback. Hey, Thomas!
Hello, am I in the frame
Yeah,
correctly?
if you move a little to the other side, yeah, there you are. There's good. There's good.
Oh
But not
God,
that
it's
side.
no this way. There we go.
Yeah,
There
there
we
you go.
go.
There you go. Hello,
You might
Thomas.
be getting older, but you're getting more handsome, Jacob.
Ooh, I needed that because it's
Oh,
Funky Friday. So
he
it's
knows his game. He knows his game, really.
hey, and hello to you, Petri, as well. Very nice to meet
Hello.
you. Very nice to see you.
Likewise.
I am really interested in what you have to say because we've set this up as an interview between me and you, and I thought it would be an interview between Thomas and Petri. But as I started in my intro here, Thomas is not as old as me, but he has double the experience of actually being a games journalist before he went into the industry and became this king of the Finns, as I call him. So, Thomas, I'm sure that you can lead us through this, right, in a really great manner.
Great might be a strong word for it, but yeah. So we thought that, or I thought I should say that. Oh, fireside chat, Jacob. Yeah, of course we'd love to support you. So I guess we're gonna talk to Jacob, and then like 3 minutes ago, it's like, oh no, Thomas, it's like between you and Petri. So, but but no no worries. I was just thinking how well. First of all, we're happy to be supporting Nordic Game and happy despite Jacob all the pandemic struggles and everything that you guys have been able to keep going, and we've been able to support you folks, and vice versa, of course. And I was just saying, sorry, I don't know the person's name who was in the green room chatting about tech. It's like these events are harder to do virtually than physically. The amount
Yeah,
of technical setting up and everything is just pretty amazing. I guess we're also used to just physically going, and there's always going to be problems. You'll just figure them out there. But like, even though I've used computers, I guess all of us for 35 years, it still can be a mess. But yes, I have some. Like I told Petri now that I'm going to ask him all these things I always wanted to ask him, but I've never asked him in the office.
brilliant. That's brilliant. Hey, I'm gonna leave you to it then. Just go ahead, Thomas.
All
Shoot.
right, well maybe, but oh no, I only see myself, so that's even more confusing. That I don't see Petri. Oh, there we go. Well, it's nice to see you, Petri.
Likewise. It's been a while since
And
we last met in person.
yes, but it's always a pleasure to meet your charming self. Like whenever I see you in the office, like you just kind of you radiate. Calmness is not the word I'm looking for, but like artistry and ideas.
Okay, thanks. I should take that as a compliment. Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
it um but I guess well it does say below there composer Remedy Entertainment. I'd say that's underselling it a bit because especially if you're in Finland and in music, Petri, you've done all sorts of um, different things in related to music, not just with different artists and bands, but classical translation, concerts, everything. I think the Finnish word would be monitoimi. Yes,
Mm,
I don't know what to use.
mm.
Use
Jack of all trades, I think.
Yeah, except
Or
you're
music
much.
trades, sound trades, something.
Yeah, and whenever and you've been at Remedy or involved with Remedy far longer than I have. You've always delivered. I
Thanks.
think that's
That's nice to
what
hear.
I've always felt like. Whenever we've been, the trailer needs X or this didn't work out, and like it's hasn't always been like ideal from a creative or timing perspective, probably. But
Yeah.
I think that's the true professional in you, that like you've always sorted it out.
Well, I have to say it's been like that since the dawn of my relationship with Remedy. Back in the day, it used to be like 15 minutes. We need this. Let's say after 15 minutes, we need this after 30 minutes, something like that. Nowadays, it's we need this tomorrow. So longer span.
Improvement.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's crazy to think of. So let's start from how did you get involved with Alan Wake? Because to me that was the first. That's when you started working with Remedy. Do you
Yeah.
remember?
Yeah, I remember. It was a strange occurrence because a friend of mine used to work at FutureMark, which was then partially owned by Remedy, or I don't know which way. Anyhow, they were in the same party, and somebody had asked my friend if he knew anyone who would be able to compose, let's say, modern classical music, enhanced with electronics and something like that. And he gave my name and mentioned me later, and it took a while before I got the first contact. But the very day when they called me, I guess it was Petri Järvilehto, who is nowadays working with whatever is the mobile company. Anyway,
Seriously.
yep, that's the one. Yes, and he kindly asked, "Do you happen to have anything, let's say, today afternoon?" And I guess my response to that was, do I need to wait until afternoon or could I? And after an hour or two, I was there. Saw the first glimpses of what was supposed to become Alan Wake. And they wanted me to do some music for the demo scene, or demo cinematic, actually. It was about following a car through valley and riverside and driving towards the city entrance. And when the car ended its journey, a guy stood out of the car, and the camera landed still behind his back. The dude in the picture was Alan Wake, and I was supposed to do music for that. And I think either I did it really well and they hired me, or I did it so cheaply that they hired me. Either way, I got the gig, and I think it was 2005. And considering the fact that Alan Wake came out in 2010, that's a longer gig, which is
Did
still
you?
on.
Yeah, yeah. Did you at that point ever really think that it would take that long? Like, did you have any
No,
kind of expectation on?
no, I had no idea how much music they would probably need. I was assuming that maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, something like that. I thought it would be over by, summer in 3, 4 months. Oh, how wrong I was. And then came all the iterations and plot changes and character changes and everything. So it was actually a very, very, very educative. Is that a word even? I don't know.
Educational, I think.
Educational, yeah. It was a very schooling time, that.
And I mean, the score of the game
Hmm.
definitely stood out in a very positive way. I think the whole Wake experience in itself is pretty
Hmm.
quite unique. And now that the remaster is out, we can kind of see that still resonates. A lot of people were like, not just does it have the licensed music, but does it have the original score? Of course, it
Hmm.
has the original score. There's the glorious art and screenshots that really confuse me now. But
Uh,
but
now that you mentioned the screenshots, actually, the first concept pictures I ever saw concerning Alan Wake, they were like that. And, as a Finn, that talks to me in big letters, in caps lock.
yeah,
I can
yeah.
really relate all that, except this one. That's
So it
midsummer thing.
it's not just the darkness. It's not just the. That was a short presentation. Thank you. It's not just the darkness and the trees.
Hmm.
It's like now that we're mostly, or some of us are more back in the office than others. It's like even when I started Remedy all those years ago, like there's always seems to be construction going on in Espoo, and whenever I see those big machines, I'm like, oh, Alan Wake. Like it's just like literally those things are like in the office backyard all the time. I'm like, um, but they're never like the darkness hasn't possessed them or anything like that. So,
Yeah, that's
but
Espo. Darkness has possessed us all.
yeah, it especially in the last couple of weeks. Um, I mean, the score is iconic. It really is. I'm curious as to how long did it, because I think the tone of Alan Wake was there pretty early on, like you said, like the certain vibe of it, it's slightly
Hmm.
offbeat, bit dark and all that. But like, how long did it take to kind of find the sort of musical side of it, or was the first thing that you did for that demo was kind of like, okay, that's already the right ballpark?
It was a happy accident, the demo thing, because I used mostly piano and string orchestra, and just a slight amount of brass instruments, and uh, it happened to be that they had already concluded that whoever is doing music for Alan Wake, woodwinds and brass instruments are no go. Those shouldn't be used, and that was one thing. And somehow that lucrative flying feeling that immediately sort of connects in my head with string instruments, and it's very hard to create such dark and ominous vibes from woodwinds, despite how low the instrument range is, or brass instruments. It's percussion, it's piano, it's strings. And back then we actually tried to shy away from synth things. They came later with Quantum Break and Control and so forth. But it was somehow decided early on that we restrict the instrumentation in some way in order to keep it coherent. And I was all good to go with that. It sounded really a bright idea, and I didn't need to readjust my thinking at all.
Yeah, and it's those, we often talk about how it is those limitations that tend to make things work.
Yes.
Like the tighter the sandbox is defined, the sort of, in some ways some of the choices are easier. Not that creating is easy, but like it's there are points in these projects often where almost sky's the limit, even though we know it isn't. Like
Mm,
there
mm,
are
mm,
cuts and everything, but it's so kind of critical to start off on the right path,
mm,
and find that right tone. And it seems like that happened with Wake already back then.
mm.
Well, we did, or we didn't do that much, to be honest, on the remaster, as D3T in the UK um, did the majority of the development work. And I'm curious, like, what your feeling is on remasters in general, because it's interesting that games age.
Mm.
Low frame rates make games age, and resolution and these things. And we were having a discussion with you a couple of weeks ago how, like, well, the audio was already mastered, the best it
Mm.
possibly could be back in 2010, so we didn't really have to do much on that, except there's a bug in the game that we're going to try to fix that makes things mono, which really sucks, but we're going to try to get around that. But like, what's your take now, like a decade later, not just looking at the game, but the experience and the sound of it and everything?
The sound of the original was somewhat dated. It was due to playback engine limitations back then. But nowadays, because of the channel number and everything, it's sky is the limit, so to speak. I didn't think anybody would be playing it after 3 or 4 years, to be honest. I loved the setting, I loved the characters, I loved the environment, and somehow I loved the continuum of Mr. Wake and all his, whatever might be. But back then, it was quite clear that only a select few games could survive the mayhem of new games and new arrivals. But it proved out that Alan Wake happened to have just the exact kind of longevity in it. It was the plot line, it was the writing, it was the characters themselves, and there is sheer danger looming and lurking behind your back practically everywhere, and that causes player, walk on his or her toes and to be as careful as possibly can, despite the fact that everybody knows what's going to happen. Remasters don't actually change or alter the plot. It stays put, but still there is this, you get to dragged into the game. The immersion is very strong with Alan Wake for some reason. It's
I think
beyond
that's one
my
of
thinking.
those remedy things, like the mood
It
and the
is.
world building, and it's not just visuals, it's the
It is.
music, it's the audio, it's the pacing of things. And we often talk a lot about that, like that's where world building is definitely like one of our strengths, and really we build a lot on that.
Yes.
Um,
They are believable worlds.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, and we tend to kind of add that layer of fantastic on top. I'm curious as to your creative process. Do you mostly start off like on piano, or do you like how does, or does that even matter? Is it just a melody that might come to you and then you have to get it out of your head, whether it's piano, acoustic guitar, software?
It's I shouldn't be discussing things like this in public because I expect
Okay, bad question. All right.
white dressed guys behind the door. But it's usually it's a flash. I see a picture, I see a clip, I see 3 seconds of cinematic, I see concept graphic picture. Just hear a story, hear a sentence about what is going to happen, and something in my head decorates that with music. And the creative process from that point towards the finalized piece is actually building a puzzle. You take the corner pieces and sort of what's in your head, you do the easiest parts first, and then you start assembling, let's say, here's some greenery, here's a tree, here's a vampire eating an ass, what? And then you have moon and everything, and you fill it up with piece by piece, one at a time, until you have the final piece to be heard. And it's quite rare that the plan changes from what's inside here to what's coming out of the speakers. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but
It doesn't, but it was fascinating.
call 911. Hello, we have this.
No, I think it's all about, like, it doesn't matter how the idea manifests itself, right? Like, it's that the creative process is the creative process, and that works in mysterious ways for everybody. But I think, I mean, music plays a huge part in our games, and audio in in general
True.
at Remedy in almost everything, not just the game, but the assets we might put out, trailers, everything. There's always a lot of kind of discussion and back and forth on those things. But if we go back to, I mean, and it's been over a decade, which is the amount of change that has happened. I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, back then, Remedy 40, 50, 60 people. Quantum as it height was something like 160, and now we're like way over 300, and I don't even know how many projects. I'm curious, like, what's your? I mean, you can't stop progress, right? But I'm kind of curious, like, from your longer perspective, how do you feel about that? How do you kind of see that change?
That's actually one of my favorite questions I've heard in a long time, because I rarely get to answer things like this. Because what I see is that the importance of sound and music, and thus the audio branding, is getting much more important within the company. And especially when we have discussed about representing our games in some kind of connected universe, and that means that somehow all the tiny pieces, they need to be more or less related to each other. I don't mean they need to sound same, but they need to belong to that exact universe as well. So it's going to be interesting few years coming, I think, because the amount of assets that are needed for the final products and the completion of those is going to be astounding. There's going to be a huge need of different pieces and songs and tracks and effects.
Yeah, because it's not just the fidelity hasn't grown simply on the graphical side. Like, it's
Yes.
grown on the audio side, and as you mentioned, it's like there are, you go back to 2010 and Xbox 360, like there's limited amount of channels, limited amount of all of these things that you can kind of use to express the music. And like you said, now it's really kind of sky's the limit. Of course, this leads me to the amount of effort we spend at the studio, or you and many others, on just making sure that everything sounds so good and everything, and then people play on their TVs back home. Which is fine as long as people play the game. That's fine. But that's I'm
True.
curious, like, how do you kind of, the quality of the music is not down to the hardware, right? Like, a good melody is a good melody, great music is great music. But, like, I'm curious, I mean, there is a difference. Like, I was telling one of our audio guys, Sam Hughes, I want to go to listen to this new album in your studio. I want to listen to it there. I'm kind of curious, like, how you feel about that, when we even know, like, most people watch our trailers and everything just on the phone.
Well, to some point, it's more or less pointless to have it mixed, in $1 million studio, because people tend to have different kinds of equipment in their home. And it's not just the equipment, it's also the acoustics, it's also the wall material, whether there are carpets or something in your ceiling, whatnot. It depends on so many things how it will eventually sound. So yes, I would, even though I'm a composer and a sound guy, I would like to say it's important to play the game and hear something at least, rather than listen to your favorite heavy metal album or whatnot. That's okay. That's perfectly okay as well. And I don't judge anybody who does that, because, well, music is a universal thing. But would you go to a restaurant and order some gourmet dish and then eat only the broccoli? No, you would probably enjoy
I
the
would eat the
whole
meat.
thing. Me too, to be honest.
And I'm
Yeah.
now looking at the top of the screen, and it says Alan Wake's Comeback, Remastering a Remedy Classic, and I'm realizing probably we should have discussed that a bit more, but I'm hearing in my earpiece from producer
Yes.
extraordinaire Jacob Rees that we're out of time.
Well, I was actually really sitting there just enjoying you talking about some good stuff, and then I also saw, oh, the actual title is Remastering a Remedy Classic. Well, I think that we'll do a comeback session about that, or maybe about something else in future editions of Nordic Game, right? So Thomas and Petri, thank you so much for joining us here. Very valuable just to hear your voices, right?
Thank you.
No, and I thought you did really good, Thomas. I know this was like improvising on the fly, you know, so that's really good. And Petri, I don't know, you are probably a really, really busy man, but yesterday we did our same game, different music composer panel. And if you should, where we have a string of composers doing a short or soundtrack for the same clip of gameplay, and then they discuss why they did it as they did it. And I would love it if I could convince you to join that panel in the future, like in May.
Would be doable, I guess.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I'm no pressure at all. I will just
No pressure. You're only asking on a live stream in front of people. No pressure at all.
I will just record this very clip and have it as a pressure point for later.
This is how Jacob rolls, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you so much, the two of you. It was a pleasure having you on, and I hope to see you physically very soon, so I can give you a big beer hug.
I'll come visit the house, Jacob.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And see you out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.
That was a little bit of an improvised Alan Wake talk. Nonetheless, one of the big composers of the games industry, talking to one of the big communications guys in the industry. And for those of you who doesn't know who Remedy are, well, go look it up and play their games. They are really, really good. Now we will take a short break, and then we'll be ready for the next interview, which I have actually prepared. So be back in 5 minutes.
Nordic Game Conference. Join the raid now.